We are now multiple weeks post NFL draft, so it is officially time for me to review the NFC West. Typically people try to give the grades right away in the NFL draft, and sometimes it's kind of nice to just wait a little bit. Wait until, maybe rookie mini camp is over, or, just give yourself a little time to think it over. So with that being said, I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. Jeremiah Love with the number 3 pick in the draft is crazy. Mainly because we just seen what Ashton Jeanty did for the Raiders last year, and he wasn't a top 3 pick. I can't remember exactly the number it was. I think it might have been like 6, maybe 8, something like that. But Jeanty didn't have a quarterback last year, and we kind of seen how that played out. And now Jeremiah Love doesn't have a quarterback necessarily this year. So how is he going to handle all the pressure on him to perform? I mean, he's getting paid to be like a top 5 running back right now already coming into the league, or top 10. So there's just a lot of pressure on Jeremiah Love. However, he is an incredible football player in the passing game. Of course, in the run game, he's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. He's a better prospect than Ashton Jeanty, in my opinion, even though they're very, very close. But Jeremiah Love is going to be an incredible football player, and whatever rookie quarterback gets this team next year, they are in for a treat with Jeremiah Love, potentially Marvin Harrison Jr. breaking out, Michael Wilson, and Trey McBride on their offense. So, got plenty of talent. Their offensive line is developing. Not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And they attacked it with Chase Bisontis in the second round. Now, Bisontis is very athletic, and he's got a strong anchor in the run game and against bull rushes. So, I think he's going to come in right away and definitely start. He's a great football player already, and it's a very safe pick to me. He does need to work with mirroring players in the pass game, but at guard in the NFL, I would say a strong anchor is the most important thing, especially with all these big defensive tackles nowadays trying to stop the run. I think having a strong anchor and being able to move players in the run game and get to the second level with that athletic ability that he possesses, I think this is a perfect match for today's NFL. I mean, even Matt Miller put Dominic Pooney as his pro comp, and he was a good pro too. I think Bisontis is going to be an above-average NFL offensive lineman in the NFL, and I'm actually very intrigued by them kind of going into the trenches after drafting a running back with the 3rd pick, kind of doubling down on, that run-first mentality. And then they go and get Carson Beck, who I know a lot of people aren't too happy about it just because, why take a quarterback this year when you could just wait and take one next year and kind of quote-unquote tank in a way. But Carson Beck kind of grew on me as the playoffs went through. He wasn't that appealing to me at the end of his Georgia career. At the beginning, sure he was, but with the off-the-field issues and kind of losing the locker room, I wasn't a huge fan. And there were questions about his deep ball and, how he can escape the pass rush with his limited athletic ability. But I think he's improved that. The deep ball still needs some work. I think his arm strength is below average. However, he's an accurate quarterback, and that's something that you can't really teach. You see J.J. McCarthy nowadays with his inaccuracy for the Vikings, and that's a big problem. The mechanics are super important in the NFL, and Carson Beck has good mechanics. He doesn't panic under pressure. He's got tons of experience, which is what you look for in an NFL quarterback, because with limited experience, we have guys like Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, and it's just typically not working out. But when it comes to people with tons of experience, I think of Bo Nix. I think of Jaden Daniels, now Carson Beck potentially, as players that are potentially going under the radar because they're older prospects, but they're more NFL ready than those like Anthony Richardsons and those type of quarterbacks that haven't had a ton of experience. I also like this pro comp of Davis Mills. Very similar play styles with limited athletic ability. And Davis Mills played very well for the Texans last year. I believe he played 4 games, and he won all 4 of them, I believe. And that's kind of what the Texans, or when the Texans really started to figure it out last year and go on that run for the playoffs. On to their next pick, Caleb Proctor is a great pick. Some people might think it's a bit of a reach, and I could kind of see that because he played at Southeastern Louisiana and he's a small defensive tackle. But this guy has a deep pass rush toolkit right away, and he has a great first step. Those are things that are going to translate to the NFL. Despite his shorter arms, there might be some struggles right away kind of adjusting to the NFL level with, of course, the lower level of competition and these bigger offensive linemen getting their hands on him before he can even reach them because of his shorter arms. So that could be a problem. He might need a year to adjust to the NFL level. However, with that pass rush toolkit, put him in the game on 3rd and long and let him run to the quarterback. He's also a really good athlete too. So, of course, when you're playing lower level of competition, it's going to knock you as a prospect in the NFL because, of course, teams take that into consideration. But having that athleticism to back you up is far more intriguing to these NFL coaches, and they believe that they can really develop you and mold you into an above-average NFL player. Reggie Virgil was an intriguing pick in the 5th round. I'm not a huge fan of him necessarily, but it's kind of that height, weight, speed type of player that you look for nowadays. I feel like everybody this year drafted one of those. He's 6'3". He's a good athlete, good route runner, and he can catch the ball in traffic nicely. However, there are some concentration drops, which is not ideal. But I will say, I feel like if a player has drop concerns in college, it's a lot easier to coach that up than it is to coach up route running or speed, of course, because speed's more so just natural. So if you've got a guy that's already a good route runner that has good speed, I think catching the ball is one of those things where it's pretty easy to coach. However, there are players like Quentin Johnston that definitely struggle to adjust to the NFL level when it comes to contested catches or just the concentration drops. But I think Johnston is kind of like an outlier when it comes to that. And I'm intrigued by Virgil's upside. And I believe he could potentially get on the field in his first year as the number 3 option. Now, Carson Scherer in the 6th round, I didn't do much research on him. So I had to do my homework and make sure I was ready to talk about him, of course. And from what I gathered, he's a good athlete, good tackler, but he's not ideal in coverage. And at the NFL level, that is going to be a problem. Teams will expose him in the passing game. So that's going to be something to monitor. Can he kind of develop his instincts in the pass game a little bit more? And also in the run game, he struggles to disengage from blocks a bit, which will be a problem when you're, trying to come in and fill in a gap, try to rip through and get to the running back. If you can't disengage, you can't rip through the blocker, it's going to be a problem in the NFL. And I think he could get exposed if he's on the field early on. He definitely needs time to develop those instincts and become more active with his hands when it comes to engaging on blocks. When it comes to Jaden Williams, also didn't do a lot of research on him, but he's basically a project tackle. He's got the proper size. He just struggles to get to defenders. He's a bit slower, but when he latches on to defenders, he moves them very, very well. There are some pad leverage concerns where he gets a little bit too high when blocking, losing that, leverage game, which is a problem, especially in NFL. All these guys are a lot stronger, so he's going to need to develop his strength and stay lower to the ground. Overall, I gave the Cardinals a C+. It's a little bit harsh. However, you'll see in the NFC West, all the grades are pretty harsh, to be honest. None of them really hit it out of the park. And I'm not a huge fan of taking a running back at number 3, but I did like the Basantis pick. I kind of like the Beck pick and the Proctor pick. Outside of that, really nothing too special. But C+, it's passing grade, and I believe that if they can hit it next year in that draft, the 2027 draft. They are going to be set up very well for the future, especially with all of their offensive weapons already being in place for that rookie quarterback. On to the Los Angeles Rams, who only had 5 picks? Yeah, 5 picks in this NFL draft. And I do not think they did a good job at handling the draft board. Ty Simpson at 13 was extremely rich. He only has 1 season starting at Alabama. Half that season was good. Half of that season was not good. Understandably, didn't have a great offensive line, and he was injured for part of that season. However, you got to stay healthy. It's extremely important. Your best ability is availability, especially now having to sit behind Matthew Stafford for probably 2 years. He will have 15 total games of experience in his last 6 years, if that does indeed happen. So it's going to be a problem to me. I think he needs on-the-field reps. I mean, who knows? Maybe Matthew Stafford gets injured. Very possible. There's been injury problems throughout his career. But Ty Simpson, to me, is a solid quarterback right away who has some upside. He's got good mechanics, quick release, which is extremely important in the NFL. He reminds me of Brock Purdy in a way. Similar athletic ability, similar arm. So I could see him panning out in the NFL. I'm just not too thrilled about the landing spot in terms of, I know the landing spot's great, in terms of having to sit for 2 years. I think maybe if he sat for 1 year, it might not be a problem. But if he has to sit for over a year, that gets to a point where you're not getting a lot of on-the-field reps, and are you really going to develop? Because I believe developing is much, much easier on the field compared to in practice, where you don't really get to see a ton of, full reps of true game action in practice. I mean, you get a little bit, but not nearly the quality level of practice that a game will give you. There is an arm strength concern here as well, which is a problem in the NFL. However, I'm not too bothered by it. I mean, he's playing in a dome at least, and he's not going to be in cold weather. So I'm not sure if those really have much of a factor, to be honest, but some people like to say they do. He's also only 6'1", which is a problem. Typically, when you're about 6'2" and under, it's not ideal in the NFL. We've kind of seen that in the past. Not many shorter quarterbacks outside of like Drew Brees have panned out. Bryce Young's kind of struggling as well, and he's probably like 6 feet tall or 5'11"-ish. Kyler Murray's been okay, though. He just has injury problems because of that smaller frame. Now, of course, same with Ty Simpson, injury problems. So there's a concern there. He's also not the greatest athlete in the world. Not a bad athlete, just it's not a strength of his. So overall, Ty Simpson is kind of mid, to be honest. I don't know. I'm not too thrilled about it. Now the next pick, Max Clare. Great receiving tight end in college. Ohio State, he didn't really provide a ton last year because he was behind Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate. So he didn't really have a ton of production. However, at Purdue, he really produced well, and he's a great tight end. The problem is they just drafted Terrence Ferguson last year in the second round, so it's a bit of a head-scratcher. They're just giving up on Ferguson like that. I don't really understand that, but all their other tight ends are expiring after this year, their contracts, so I can understand it from that perspective of, you got to replace these players if they're not going to stick around. But Max Clare is a good route runner. He's got some good athleticism as well, and he's got good hands. He's very reliable. And he was actually a former quarterback as well, so he's got that kind of instinctual ability when it comes to NFL coverages. He does also have a little bit of an injury history with an ankle injury that caused him to miss quite a bit of time in college. But overall, I like the pick. But my main problem with it is that they just drafted a tight end in the second last year. Keegan Trost in the third round is interesting to me. It was a bit of a reach, in my opinion. I think a lot of people can agree with that. Got tons of experience, but he's going to be 25 coming into the league with limited athletic tools. So does he really have that much upside? Probably not. I think he's more of a backup tackle. He has decent strength to move players in the run game, and He can get to the second level when pulling. So there is something to work with there. Maybe he is kind of that tackle that comes into the game as kind of a bonus tackle. If they want to come in with like a bigger package, he has enough ability to move players in the run game, maybe on those goal line type plays, as we kind of seen what the Lions did with Dan Skipper. So I could totally see that. But overall, Trask doesn't have a lot of athletic upside, and he is an older prospect, so I'm not too intrigued. CJ Daniels was kind of an interesting pick. A player that does really fit their style of football. He's a great run blocker who is just reliable in the pass game. He's not a fast athlete. Same with all of their other players, it seems like. The Rams don't really have any true speedster right now that really gets meaningful playing time. This kind of reminds me of Puka Nacua in a way. He's a good route runner especially as well, and produced very well at Liberty. Didn't do a ton at Miami last year, but he still was a productive player. On to their 7th round pick, Big Tim Keenan. I actually really like the pick, mainly because of the value here. I think he makes a lot of sense to take in the 7th round. He's known as a great teammate, great run defender, who can hold his ground and play at a low pad level. And I think that'll match really well with what they have at the defensive line right now. They don't really have a true run defender, and with the NFL kind of changing to that, it makes a lot of sense to get a big guy like Tim, who is 327 pounds. This allows the Rams to potentially take Braden Fisk off the field in run down type plays. If he develops, of course, being a 7th round pick, it's unlikely that he'll really play a ton. But sometimes you do see that out of defensive tackles because most of the time you're just looking for a big body to stop somebody. That's about it. Fill gap and stick to your gap. Hold your ground. That's about all you need out of a defensive tackle nowadays. He doesn't really provide much in the pass game, and he does have shorter arms, which will be a problem in the NFL. However, of course, the Rams, they know how to handle defensive tackles with short arms, with Aaron Donald being an obvious example of that. So hopefully Keenan can develop nicely. But overall, I'm not a huge fan of the Rams draft class. It's not bad, but not ideal to me. I'm going with a D. Ty Simpson could be a smart pick. We will find out in a couple of years. And Max Clare didn't make a ton of sense because they just drafted tight end last year. And CJ Daniels is an intriguing pick, but Keegan Trost in the 3rd was kind of like the big outlier, kind of between rounds 3 and 7. Moving on to the Seahawks, where they drafted pretty well in the first 3 rounds and then kind of fell off after that. Jadarian Price at 32 was a reach. However, he was clearly the number 2 running back in the class, and he was going to go earlier than expected regardless. So if you want your guy, might as well just go get him. And I think he's going to fit amazing in this offense. He's definitely that Kenneth Walker type replacement. He is a big back, not fat. He's a big running back, and he does possess that home run type speed. There was a problem with a torn Achilles in his career to start, so that's going to be something to monitor. Will it have any effects long term? I don't think so necessarily, just because that happened, I believe, when he was a freshman, and there really hasn't been any issues since then, but it's something to take note of. He is surprisingly good in the pass game as well with those natural hands and decent route running. He just didn't really have to do a ton of that because he had Jeremiah Love in the backfield alongside him. And since he had Love pairing with him and kind of playing behind him, Price doesn't have a lot of wear on the tires. He should be fairly fresh going into the NFL. He can be a true bell cow, and I think he's a really good player. He's going to come in and be a really productive NFL player. And for fantasy football players, make sure you guys take a look at Jadarian Price and draft him. Moving on to Bud Clark in the 2nd round. He has natural coverage instincts. He's a great leader and has fluid hips. So he's going to come into the NFL right away and be a legitimate coverage safety. He's not great in the run game, struggles to tackle and fill the lanes. So that is something to note. However, I think it's something that he can work on. His size isn't too small. It's a little bit undersized to me if you want to be a safety, but he can come in, play free safety right away, and be impactful in the pass game. Overall, though, I actually really like the pick. It is a little bit early, but I think I had him as like a mid-third round, early third round type player, so like really not that big of a reach to me. And Bud Clark was one of my more favorite players in the draft. So I actually like that pick quite a bit. Julian Neal in the third round was interesting. ESPN had him ranked extremely low. I did not have him this low. He's built like a boundary corner with his frame, 6'2", 203, and he's a good tackler. He has good short area quickness, good zone coverage. Major problem would be his speed. He lacks that top-end speed to really keep up with these fast wide receivers in the NFL. So that's going to be a problem on the boundary. But with that short area burst, that might allow him to be a big slot corner, potentially, because he can keep up with those twitchy wide receivers. Or he could play safety, potentially, if Bud Clark doesn't really work out. That could be a really good second option, potentially. Or maybe play behind Nick Emanwari at strong safety. He is actually really solid at the catch point, too. He breaks up passes very, very efficiently. And I think overall, this is actually a good pick. A little bit of a reach, but not that much to me. I had him in the fourth round. I don't know what ESPN was thinking with 169 as the overall rank. That is really far down for him, especially. Bo Stevens from Iowa, like I always say, can't go wrong drafting an Iowa offensive lineman. They're physical, violent, good in the run game. The major problem would be his mirroring ability in the pass game, I would say, is probably like the main outlier. He has gotten injured throughout his college career as well a few times, so it's something to take note of. But when you take players in the fifth round, I mean, looking for somebody with a great tool, which is his run blocking, and then developing the other tool, which would be pass blocking, makes a lot of sense. Take somebody that has something already developed, so you know that he has the ability to develop skills, and then try and develop the other skill, of course, being his pass blocking. Emmanuel Henderson, I didn't do a lot of research on him, but he is a vertical threat that lacks lateral agility and has drop concerns. So I'm not sure what to make of it. He can open up the field for JSN, Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, and Rashid Shaheed, of course. He's kind of that backup to Shaheed is my thought process behind it. So maybe he can play a little bit as kind of a reliever for Shaheed if he gets tired, but he's going to spread out the offense a bit with his vertical abilities. Andre Fuller, also didn't do a lot of research on him. He has good size for his position. However, he is not great against speedy wide receivers or twitchy wide receivers. So he could potentially also be a guy that maybe converts to safety, I guess. So that kind of confuses me a bit because Bud Clark and Julian Neal are kind of safeties as well. Julian Neal probably would stick at corner, though. So it's a questionable pick to me. But in the seventh round, if you like the guy's frame and are confident in developing him, might as well take a chance. Then they took Devin Eastern, who is similar to Tim Keenan for the Rams now. He is a space filler. 6'5", 315, basically similar to Tim Keenan. However, he played at Minnesota compared to Alabama. He lacks true technique, but is just kind of like a raw type player with good strength and okay agility. He also struggles to anchor, which is a major problem because he's supposed to be a space filler. He's got to anchor against double teams, and that's going to be something that he's going to have to work on in order to get playing time. Moving on to Michael Dansby, Arizona cornerback. I'm not a huge fan of him, to be honest. He's not the fastest corner in the world. He's not physical at the catch point, and there are pass interference penalty concerns. So there's some question marks when it comes to his athletic ability and his instincts. However, he is pretty solid when it comes to man coverage, kind of underneath or in that medium distance range. But I don't really like his potential long term. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of this class outside of, I would say their first 3 to 4 picks were solid, and then it was kind of meh. But I mean, it's kind of hard to hit on picks in the 6th and 7th round. There were some reaches here with their first 4 picks. However, I don't mind the reaches if you believe that it fits your team well and they have upside. If they have upside, then it makes a lot of sense to take a player that might be ranked as like a 3rd round player in the 2nd round. Overall, I'm giving them a C+. Not bad, just some reaches like I said, and nothing too crazy, nothing too special. So C+ for the Seahawks. Now, 49ers. Oh my Lord. Talk about reaches all over the board. Not a lot that I like here, to be honest. Desjuan Stribling, it was just such a reach to me. And I had him as a mid-3rd round player. He is a Jawan Jennings replacement for sure. And is Jawan Jennings' level of player worth the first pick in the 2nd round? I don't think so. There were other players on the board that made a lot more sense, especially Denzel Boston, to replace Mike Evans when he retires here soon, and he can easily learn behind Mike Evans and develop his skills very nicely. But Stribling has some tools. He's fast, solid route runner who is fairly natural after the catch. He can find soft spots in the zone. However, I would say the major negatives would be his ability at the catch point. Those one-on-one balls aren't ideal to him, despite being 6'2". That's something that he needs to work on. And then his release package needs some work. He's just a bit slow off the release to me, and he builds up speed, so it takes him a while to get to that top end. So if he can improve his release package, then I think he will be a solid, impactful player in the NFL. Romello Height in the 3rd round is intriguing. I actually don't mind this pick at all. Solid value, and he went to 4 different schools in college, which is crazy to me. 4 different schools, and didn't produce a ton until he got to Texas Tech. He was solid at the other schools. However, when he got to Texas Tech, that's when he really broke out. He is a great pass rushing edge rusher who has a hot motor that continues throughout the game. He doesn't take a play off. He's got active hands and is surprisingly good in zone coverage, actually, when he drops. Being with this smaller frame causes issues in the run game with holding his ground, so he can get pushed and washed down the line of scrimmage. So that's something that he's going to have to work on. Maybe adding some mass to get to 250 could be a good number for him to shoot for. But yeah, with that small frame, he is going to be more of a designated pass rusher to start his NFL career. Now, if he puts on some pounds and improves his anchor in the run game, I think then he will be more of a 3-down edge rusher. I will say he also has to improve his tackling ability as well. That's something that has lacked in his career. Now, Kalen Black was an extreme reach. If you thought the Desjuan Stribling pick was a reach, this was double that. I had him as a 6th round running back, and he got taken in the 3rd round as the number 3 running back drafted in the class. I don't mind him as a prospect, but this is extremely rich to me. He's not really impactful in the passing game, and he's an older prospect who lacks top-end speed, but he is kind of a bowling ball in the run game. He's 5'10", 210, stays low to the ground. He gets a good amount of yards after contact. He's patient when it comes to finding a lane, and then he attacks a hole when he sees it. He's solid in pass protection, very aggressive. That aggressive nature can cause him to kind of whiff on those blocks sometimes. However, he shows that aggressive nature in the pass game, which is extremely intriguing because you kind of have to be fearless as a running back trying to stop an edge rusher coming full speed at you. Grayson Halton in the 4th round, actually like this pick quite a bit. He gets off the ball quick. He's got active hands. He's good in twists. He can find the ball carrier through the pile of players, which are all very good tools to have in the NFL. The problem is he has a short frame, short arms, and that causes him to struggle with double teams. He also struggles with his pad level and his agility. So those are going to be some real problems in the NFL. He's got to lower the pad level, and with a lack of agility, it definitely limits his upside and his tracking down speed. However, he's a fun project defensive tackle, and it was really good value to take him in the 4th round. On to Carver Willis. He's a decent athlete who plays with good leverage, so he's a solid run blocker, but when it comes to the pass game, he really struggles to stick with edge rushers, and that's going to be a problem at the next level, of course, especially as an offensive tackle. He might have to move inside to guard if possible, but he's definitely going to need time to develop his ability to mirror edge rushers. And with his decent athleticism, it's not impossible for him to develop that in his game. So maybe he sticks out at tackle. He's got good size. So hopefully he can learn behind Trent Williams for a year and then take over after he probably retires next year. Never know. It's possible. And in the 4th round, taking him, it makes me think that they believe that he can be a starting tackle at some point in the NFL. With Ephesians Prysock in the 4th round, by the way, great name. It's a great name. He is a good corner with good length, of course, good frame, and good speed, of course, as well. So it's almost that height, weight, speed, but on the defensive side of the ball. I actually really like this pick. The major problem is his tackling, so he's not great in the run game, but he's solid at the catch point, and he can mirror receivers pretty nicely. So I am intrigued by him as a prospect, and he's got a lot of potential. Jaden Duggar, another guy with potential, where he played safety for a while and then went to linebacker. He's a 6'5" linebacker, so great size. He struggles in the run game, mainly because of the lack of experience at linebacker, but of course he is good in coverage for a linebacker due to that safety experience. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of he's good in the pass game because of that experience in the past, but he also struggles in the run game because of the lack of experience now for linebacker. And another thing he has going for him is he's a reliable tackler. So all he has to do really is improve his ability to fill gaps in the run game. And that just takes probably another year of experience learning behind guys like Fred Warner will be great for his development. And I think that is a great pick. He has tons of potential. Bit of a reach, of course. However, you're looking for tools. You see a guy with potential and you believe you can develop him, might as well take a swing in the 5th round. Enrique Cruz Jr. in the 5th round was kind of a questionable pick to me. Another tackle, and he's a decent athlete, but he plays with a high pad level, so that's going to be a problem in the NFL because, of course, you lose leverage, and he kind of lacks that strength already. So without that leverage and without that core strength, there's going to be a problem with getting moved in the pass game and in the run game when you're trying to move players yourself. So instead of moving players forward, he's getting pushed back. That's going to be a problem, of course, and he is going to need tons of time to develop, but he can climb to the 2nd level with his athletic ability. So, I mean, you kind of have something going there, but he definitely needs to lower that pad level. That is the number one thing that you have to do and you have to learn as a tackle and as an offensive lineman / defensive lineman at any level of football. It's one of the most important things to learn. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can develop him. If not, they got a guy like Carver Willis. If one of those guys develops, they have a Trent Williams replacement, hopefully. Overall, I'm going to give this class a D, mainly because of the Stribling and Kalen Black pick. But I did like the Romello Height pick, the Ephesians Prysock pick, and the Jaden Duggar pick. However, I was just really disappointed with these 2 picks. It just wasn't great value. You've got to learn how to manage the board better than that. But who knows? Maybe they develop them nicely and I look stupid in 2 years. We'll find out. I mean, that's the part of grading a draft class so early is we really don't have much of an idea. So before I end this video, that's what I'm just going to say. The major caution is grading these players now doesn't really do them justice, especially for the players with tons of potential, because we really don't know until 2 to 3 years down the road. But this video was more so to explain the picks, maybe explain the thought process behind them and what you're really getting from a player day one in the NFL, or maybe what do they need to learn in order to play. So hopefully this video was informative to you, and if you're a fan of one of these NFL teams, good luck this year, and hopefully the draft classes work out. Please subscribe to help me grow my small channel, and check out my other videos. I have reviewed the NFC North and the NFC East so far. I have the NFC South coming next. And also, while you're down there, make sure you guys like the video, of course. There's no harm in liking the video, and comment your thoughts overall on the video, because I love seeing the comments and responding to them. With that being said, I am Levi Nordstrom, and this is Couch Football, and I will see you guys in the next video.